Hi, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to hand paint some yarn with some different colors of Dylon Hand Dye. We've got 50 grams of Shine Sport, which is 60% cotton, 40% modal, 50 grams of Cotton, which is 70% cotton, 30% linen, Simply Cotton Sport, which is 100% organic cotton, 50 grams of wool of the Andes, which is 100% Peruvian Highland wool, and then a little mini skein of acrylic. I'm not expecting this to take up any color, but we won't know until we try, so I'm throwing it in there as sort of a little tester. Now, I know that this 100% wool takes the dye, we get more muted colors than we do with say, cotton, but I'm a little curious about these blends, so let's have some fun. I am pre-soaking the yarn in plain tap water for a minimum of 30 minutes so the fibers can all be saturated. I have 2 containers. Each of them have about 3 cups, pretty close to 3 cups of warm water, just warm tap water. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of salt to each one. This is non-iodized table salt. Initially, I thought that I would dip dye the yarn into one color and then the other and then let them sit for the hour. But then I realized that I wanted to hand paint with a sponge brush because I didn't want to contaminate the colors. So I think I'll do, with whatever dye remains, I'll do some kind of dip dyeing video. I have done some dyeing with these dyes without salt. I have a feeling the salt helps you achieve a more even color, but I honestly don't know. This is something that I will need to explore more personally in the future. The 2 colors that we are going to use today are Flamingo Pink, and I'm adding this packet just to 1 container, and then Bahama Blue. I opened these earlier and I used a small amount of the powder to create some speckled yarns. I think, gosh, each packet has 50 grams of dye. There is no way that I used that much color well, obviously I had a lot to go in here, so I did not, there's still plenty of dye left over to hand paint these colors, but I'm curious to see how much the dyes will spread on the different colors and the final depth of color that we will get with each shade. Well, there goes my spoon. Anyway, I'm going to keep mixing these to make sure that the dye is dissolved, but I think we're basically there. And I'm going to lay the yarn out so we can get ready to start hand painting. I can't really tell the difference between the organic cotton and the Cotton, but those 2 are up here in front. Then we have the Shine, which is the cotton modal blend, the 100% wool, and the acrylic. I will have to take a closer look with some bare I have of these 2 at the end to figure out which one's which. Haven't really decided on a pattern or anything, but I think I'm going to start with the pink. When I was speckling, it seemed like the pink was a bit less potent than the blue. Ooh, look at that bright color on the white. I'm really curious to see how, whoop, I'm dripping a bit, how the different colors will read onto these different blends. Okay, so for a little bit, we don't have penetration all the way through yet. If we need to, we can flip these and go back over. I sort of wish this was a smaller cup that I had in place, but it is what it is. Yeah, my concerns with dip dyeing were that, okay, there we go. I was concerned that if I were to try to dip dye this yarn, that I would end up creating a purple in one of the baths, and then I wouldn't really get to compare the hues all the way. You can see that I'm painting in sort of a sloppy way. I want the fiber to be really saturated into the parts. And oh, this one is not absorbing as well as some of these others. Interesting. I could have put this in bottles and squeezed onto it, but I wonder if that one, interesting, we are not feeling as, ooh, there's white in there. Definitely not feeling as absorbent there as some of these others, but I'm curious like how much the dyes will wick up. There is a lot, look at that white. Strange. This one not get wet all the way. Interesting. Having some paper towels on hand is handy. I haven't decided on the complete pattern yet. Whatever this one is on the end, maybe I should try to spread it out a bit more. It is just not as absorbent, which really doesn't tell me too much about which one it is. The dye is definitely still warm. Definitely still warm. I really don't think that it's that I'm getting less liquid down here. I think that that yarn is just the least absorbent of all of these that I'm using. There is time for the dye to sort of absorb and go down through these fibers. I found that I didn't really get something that looked super kettle dyed while I was using this. The colors I got were a lot more solid. Each packet of dye says that it is good for ½ pound. And that's about how much fiber I have right here. I have about a total of 8 ounces, just under 8 ounces of yarn here. Man, look at that. I definitely pre-soaked this, but this color, this yarn is, maybe I squeezed out too much of the water. I wish I could tell which one you were. You are being a pain, friend. It's funny, looking at them, I still don't know which one is which. That is hopefully not too much of a problem. Oh yeah, that dye is going through pretty well. I'm really curious with this shine, how much color we'll have left. Well, I guess I'm curious with all of them, but I've never dyed Shine Sport before, and I knit with it a lot, so I am excited. Okay, yeah, that's going through pretty well. I'm so curious about how this color is just not wanting to go in. I think that, you know, certainly different yarn has different absorbency, but whatever this is, it is really not absorbent. Oh no, I just dropped my brush all the way. Okay, that is going through on the bottom a bit, but we're gonna end up with a lot more purple over there because I'm trying to work the fiber through a lot more. Okay, let's get some of this blue on our acrylic. Just that section that was going to be a problem, or is it more? Alright, anyway, I am going to keep on applying dye with this brush. I mean, you could do something for more tonal variation in the patches, I think, if you were to use less of the liquid. You also probably could concentrate this further, but I am going to continue adding on the dye, doing smaller and thicker patches, uneven patches of the color, and then I'll come back right before we're ready to start letting this sit for our waiting period. Yeah. Alright, I have applied dye to the yarn. I see some more white patches a little in these two, but I'm going to come back and check in on half an hour and see how the colors have spread out. Some of the color spreading is from my painting. Some is just because of the way the colors are wicking through. There is a lot of liquid on the counter, so I'm just going to clean up these edges a bit and then we'll wait half an hour and come back. It's been half an hour and some of the colors have spread a bit, but we definitely have some of the pure pink and blue remaining all over the place. There are absolutely still dry patches in this, whatever this front one is. I'm still gonna have to wait until they're dry to figure out which one was the organic cotton versus the cotton linen blend, but I'm going to let this sit for another 30 minutes, so it'll be an hour total, and then we'll start washing these to see if there's any difference between these fiber types. It has been an hour, and I am now going to take all of this yarn directly over to the sink and plop it in some water so we can start rinsing out the excess dye. Quickly, 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 quickly. Okay, better go clean that up. This is the problem with having so much wet material. There are towels in there, but thankfully I don't think that was in there long enough to create a big purple problem for me. That's a really pretty shade of purple though. This is cool water that This is cool water I'm using right now to rinse the yarn. And you can see right away our 50-gram hank of wool is a lot more pastel. Interestingly, I do see a bit of color in our 100% acrylic. And this, I think, was our troublemaker. Whoa, that is vibrant. This, I think, is the shine. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell when things are wet. Let me see. I think because of the glisten that might be the shine, but I'm very intrigued by that guy. Anyway, There's a lot of washing to do. While I'm doing this, I tend to set things, you know, in front and move them to the back. But I am going to keep rinsing all of this until the water runs clear, and then I'm going to hang up this yarn to dry. Here is the finished dry yarn. We have a tiny bit of 100% acrylic, 50 grams of wool of the Andes worsted weight yarn, which is 100% Peruvian highland wool, 50 grams of Shine Sport yarn, which is 60% Pima cotton, 40% modal. And then we have the two that I couldn't tell the difference between on my counter. And the way I was able to differentiate between the Simply Cotton Sport, which is 100% organic cotton, and the Cotton yarn, which is 70% cotton, 30% linen, was by counting the strands in the hank. Simply Cotton is sport weight and has more yardage than Cotton. So can you guess which one is which? Cotton is our really vibrant, the most vibrant of all the ones we dyed this time. And the Simply Cotton Sport has a lot more of a muted tone. Now, this might seem a little surprising, but we did have a problem with this Simply Cotton Sport yarn. The fibers just were not saturated enough, and I had trouble getting the dye to go into the fibers. I think that this really accounts for the lighter tone that we see on this yarn overall. There's still some beautiful depth, and I have seen that this yarn can dye really nicely with the Dylon Hand Dyes. But I think that maybe with this Simply Cotton, organic cotton, it needs to pre-soak for a long time to make sure that the fibers are actually saturated if you want to do some kind of hand painting technique. The slightly paler tones on the Shine Sport are to be expected, but even with the 40% modal, there's a lot of color in here. It's less vibrant than our Cotton for sure, but it took a lot of color, which is really encouraging because I personally really love knitting with the Shine line of yarn from Knit Picks. I love using it for baby hats, baby blankets, all kinds of things. And there is not a variegated form of this line. So being able to over dye it yourself is a really, really fantastic feature. Based on our other Dylon Hand Dye projects, we should not be surprised at all that the 100% wool took not even just a paler tone, but a different hue. We don't see the Bahama Blue, we see more of a mint green and this dusty rose color instead of the vibrant Flamingo Pink. It's still pretty, just very different from the advertised hues that we saw on the yarn, or we saw on the dye. The acrylic is possibly the biggest surprise. The pink didn't really do much at all, but we definitely have some blue. It's a pastel blue, but it's still a blue. We got color on the acrylic yarn. So can you use this to dye acrylic? Oh, maybe. I think if it's your only option, maybe the color you want might alter the color of what you're dyeing a little bit. But it's always worth doing a little bit of a test before dyeing a whole project. I know that a lot of different dye manufacturers, their sites are flooded with people saying, I didn't get the advertised color. And a lot of time I think it's because people don't pay attention to the fiber content of what they're dyeing and what the dye is intended to color. It's interesting. When I first felt the cotton, I was like, oh yeah, that feels different from the 100% cotton. But it's subtle enough that I couldn't tell them apart until I counted to get a sense of the yardage. Thankfully, the difference between 164 and 123 yards is enough that I was able to tell the difference versus having to do a complete redo. But this did teach me that now when I'm using the Simply Cotton yarn, I will dye it, I'll pre-soak it overnight. And you can see, and why isn't this tied around anymore? You can get a really brilliant, bright color on the yarn. You just need to be able to get the dye in good contact with the fibers. There might be the barest hint of pink on this acrylic yarn. Certainly nothing that holds a candle to even the 100% wool, much less these cotton blends. I was really excited to do this experiment. I love it when I have the opportunity to dye multiple fibers and blends at the same time in the same colorways, so we can look at differences on how either the final products, how they behave while you're dyeing with them, and more. This is not the first time I've observed this difficulty with the Simply Cotton Sport. When I tried to dry on the yarn with the tie-dye markers, I found that it was just really hard to get the dye to absorb to this yarn. So whatever it is, this is way less absorbent than, say, a yarn that is typically used for dishcloths like Knit Stitchy or the Sugar and Cream, Lily Sugar and Cream yarn you can find at big box retailers. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and found it helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. Based on your requests, I am branching out, looking at other brands of dye, and looking at more variety of fiber types, not just in the wool sphere. I am really happy to share this video looking at 3 different types of cotton blend and ways that you can achieve some really vibrant, variegated colorways on these yarns. The ChemKnits patrons in their monthly poll really have contributed to shaping the direction that I go with new themes and episodes of Dyepot Weekly and other dyeing videos. And I think that if I hadn't gotten the feedback that all of you wanted to see more cotton dyeing, then I might not be doing this experiment here today. So thank you so much for the support. And if you'd like to become a ChemKnits patron, check out the Patreon link. You can find it both in the iCard and the video description. Thank you so much for watching this dyeing video.